Welcome to the 30-Minute Hour. It's the personal development podcast for the seven-figure entrepreneur who's looking to level up and become unstoppable. I'm your host, Eric Twiggs, your procrastination prevention partner. And joining me as always, you know him as the super CEO, the business strategist extraordinaire, and all-around good guy, Ted Fells.
Happy Monday. Happy Monday. It's the start of the week of the favorite holiday of turkeys across the country. I'm sure they're excited about this this week. Happy Monday.
I think it's a lot of turkeys wondering why the butcher or the cook is being real nice to them all of a
Real
sudden.
nice, real nice. Rubbing them all on the back, massaging them and everything.
Right.
You can have whatever you want to eat, as much as you want.
Inviting them into the house and all of that,
That's it.
All right. We definitely hope you, those of you listening and watching, that you have a happy Thanksgiving this week. And we also hope that Thanksgiving is a continuous state of mind and not just a day you celebrate.
Right. Not just a day you eat. Not just about eating.
There you go. There's more to it than that.
That's right.
All right. So today we're going to talk about 5 martial arts secrets to unleash your business breakthrough. So if you're Ted, if you're walking down a dark alley, you want our guest to be with you at that time.
Tell you something. You don't want to mess with somebody to talk about 5 martial arts secrets. That's all I need to know. You want that person on your side. You want them on your side.
Now, somebody that's written multiple books on the topic, that's not somebody you want to mess with either.
No. Get it. I get it.
Yeah. So yeah, but we're going to talk about how these martial arts principles apply to having success in the business world as well. So our guest, he's been studying and teaching martial arts since 1970. He's a best-selling author of 29 books. That's right. He's written 29 books. He's been interviewed on Fox News and in Forbes and on Jim Bohannon show. So he's got a lot to say about business, about martial arts, and just life in general. So please join me in welcoming to the 30-Minute Hour, Lawrence Kane.
Thanks, guys. Great to be here. Appreciate it.
Yeah, great having you on the show. Look forward to what we're going to get into today, the 5 martial arts secrets to unleash your business breakthrough. So I did a little research on you, and you began your martial arts journey at age 6. So can you share with us the backstory that motivated you to get into the martial arts?
Sure. It's not the most exciting thing in the world. It's the typical, kind of thing that happened in the 60s and 70s. I met school bully. And I lost. And my dad decided that I wasn't going to lose again. So he sent me over to Sensei Yamada, who it happened, I didn't know it, but at the time, he was the highest ranking black belt in the United States. He's a guy who was primarily responsible for bringing judo to America. In fact, his students included folks like Senator Ben Norris Campbell and other famous folks. And he taught me that I didn't need to worry about guys who are bigger and stronger and meaner than me, because he taught me how to use what they were going to do against them. And it was, judo is a great thing for kids, especially when you're young and flexible and you can get up after getting slammed on the ground repeatedly. And, I learned how to compete. I learned how to persevere. I learned some skill to the point where in high school, I remember I used to work out with a lot of the guys on the football team who were massively bigger than me. Some of these guys were, D1 scholarship type athletes. And that was the focus of the football program. And, I played not very well, but I did play a little bit. But there was a judo, boxing, and wrestling class that our PE teachers decided to do. And I would go toe to toe with these, 240-pound, linemen, and sometimes win, but at least always have a chance because I had some skill and they had strength and speed. but I had skill, and it was fun. And so, I learned a lot from it as a kid. Didn't stay with judo, went to other things, but that's what got me started in it. And the thing I did the longest was I did Goju-ryu karate. It's one of the earliest form of karate from Okinawa. It was not named after either a family name or location. And so if you've seen like the Karate Kid, the Mr. Miyagi, that came from the guy who created Goju, whose name happened to be Chojin Miyagi.
Interesting. So a couple of things there. I think your father probably helped by introducing you to martial arts, helped you with just a huge life lesson as far as just the need where you have to face the bully, right? I mean, at some point, I mean, it's because the bully is never going to stop. The bully is never going to just be like, okay, you know what? I'm being pretty hard on Lawrence. I just need to. The bully is going to be right outside your locker at 3:00 until you deal with him one way or another. And I think that translates in life as well.
Well, it really does. I mean, I went to school in a different time, right? Zero tolerance wasn't a thing. And, you could go out and settle your differences on the playground, and there'd always be a teacher or two to watch, make sure no one picked up a rock or a stick or something. But I still remember first big fight I got into, the bully's name had to be Tim. I stood up to him. Neither one of us actually knew what we were doing, so it was mostly pushing each other down. And I managed to take a little bit of what I had learned from judo, and I pinned him and held him there. And then I didn't really know what to do. So I just held him there until he said, can I get up now? And went, are you going to stop picking on me? He went, yeah. Let him up. And we actually ended up becoming really good friends.
Becoming a friend.
Yeah. But it was kind of funny because I never really thought about what to do once it was successful. So I just sat there looking at him, and all the other kids are like, oh my God, but it was, we ended up being great friends, and lost touch with him after college. But this was, I'm old. They didn't have the internet and Facebook and whatever you'd use, X nowadays to try to stay in touch with people. But that was a great lesson. And just directly applying when you stand up to yourself and you believe in yourself, and you're a little bit crafty, you don't get picked on.
Awesome. So if you had to go back and talk to the 6-year-old version of yourself, knowing what you now know, what advice would you give them?
I think the biggest thing was I'd been brought up, for some reason, my folks were very much like, you want to be a team player. And I did a lot of various sports, but in my head, being a team player meant I'm trying to do things for the team, not necessarily that I'm trying to do my best at whatever it is I'm doing. And somehow I never drew that connection between, the way I'm best for the team is to be the absolute best that I can be, until I was in high school. It was actually a football coach that taught me that. And it was one of those things where I don't know why, but it was just a subtle mindset difference, which is personal excellence for the right reason that elevates everything else, right? If I'm just kind of going along with it, I'm letting myself down and letting the team down. If I'm doing my absolute best in furtherance of the team, then everything raises. And I don't know why I didn't figure that out, but it was because it was like really obvious in retrospect, but I didn't. So that's one of the things I tell myself. I think another thing I tell myself is not related to martial arts, but more related to kind of life in general. Like I have a business degree, which when I went to college taught you how to be, an accountant or a finance guy or a marketing person or whatever it is, right? It didn't teach you how to run a business. It just taught you how to be a good little corporate drone in whatever business you're in. And my whole life I've been, following kind of this path that other people laid out of, oh, you're going to do this, and then you're going to do that, and then you're going to do this other thing. But it was never really aimed at running my own thing, making my own path so much as following others. So that's the other thing I would say is like, look, you want to learn what other people are doing, but you don't have to follow the crowd. And sometimes you want to be doing something that's off the beaten path, and that's what can do amazing things for you. And it, just as an example, in my previous role, I created a new job family and a new function in a 107-year-old company, which doesn't happen very often, right? And I created a whole organization. It's one of the reasons I'm in a Hall of Fame, not a martial arts one. It's actually a procurement Hall of Fame, which is not as exciting. But the part of the reason for that is because I've done things for the industry by forging my own path instead of following everybody else. And so that's something I started actually fairly late in my career and kind of stumbled into it. But that's it was something to give myself permission to not follow the pack. It made a big difference.
Yeah, I think there's always that pressure to conform. And I think that's what school, and then when I was coming up, that's kind of one of the lessons I got. And then that point you made was a great point about personal excellence, because it is easy to perceive that, oh yeah, be a team player means that you need to kind of dim your light.
Right.
So that other people can shine.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know why I interpreted it that way, but that's what I did. So.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So as you know, I have a martial arts background as well. And so one of my lessons from martial arts that I've learned is to never judge a book by its cover. Right. I had this one instructor who, if you saw him, he's the most mild-mannered, nicest guy, most laid back. But you get on the mat with him, it's a totally different ball game. So I've learned, and I've sparred against people that I looked at and said, "Oh man, come on, this is a waste of my time," and it was, it wasn't a waste of my time. So that's one of the lessons that martial arts has taught me, and that's something I carry with me. I don't underestimate anybody. I don't judge a book by its cover. Like, what are some of the lessons that you've learned from martial arts that have helped you in business?
Yeah, I think the first one really is mindfulness, and there's a phrase that was used in The Last Samurai, which I actually love. It's everybody who speaks Japanese, I'm going to apologize up front because I'm going to mispronounce it. But it's Hakoiki Hitatsu Nimo Samai Garidori, which means life in every breath. And that has all kinds of levels of meaning. But the most obvious one is it's about mindfulness and living in the moment. And that's really, really important. I negotiate contracts for a living, oftentimes multi-billion-dollar contracts. That's really high stress. That's the kind of thing where, the winning team, they all go out and celebrate on their new, yacht or whatever. And the losing team, they're looking for new jobs, kind of level of contracts. And I'm being a little flip about that, but it is very high stakes. And so one of the things that mindfulness helps you do is it helps you not judge the book by its cover thing, right? You can see what people are telling you in some ways by not saying things, right? So you're able to read a room, you're able to read yourself. It helps with emotional intelligence. It helps with all the things that really keep you there and on track. And it's not just a de-stress thing. But you learn in martial arts, for example, block breathing or 4-count breathing, whatever, combat breathing, whatever you want to call it. Mm-hmm. That's part of it as well, right? So mindfulness isn't, sitting under the waterfall, in meditation position for hours, becoming enlightened. It's just being aware of everything that's going on and what it really means to you and what you mean to it. And that's just a huge thing when it comes to leading a team. It comes to being part of a negotiation. It comes to implementing a business strategy. I find that just the most easily translatable thing from martial arts to real life.
So being mindful, like how would one of our business leaders who's watching or listening develop mindfulness practices or mindfulness habit?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's all kinds of books and programs on that. Part of it is just taking the moment to be in the moment, right? Just pay attention to your breathing, pay attention to what's around you, turn off the self-talk, and just fully be aware of what's there. And that's something that's, especially in today's world with all the noise that's out there with your, devices, with your distractions and all that. It is useful to just take a moment and literally be in the moment. What are you feeling? What are you smelling? What are you seeing? What are you hearing? How is your body reacting to these things? And, if you get really good at it, you can do things without anybody even noticing you're doing it. But in the meantime, if you're very stressed out, one of the things that I've taught a lot of people is the 4-count breathing. So you breathe in for 4 count, you hold for 4 count, you breathe out for 4 count, you hold for 4 count, and then you repeat. And what that does is it slows everything down. It literally will slow your heart rate. It makes it almost impossible to panic about things. It lets you calm yourself and be able to focus. And so that combination of being aware of what's going on and focusing on your breathing really puts you in a state where you can be your best in whatever you're in, because you don't have the stress, you don't have the external. In other words, you're not reacting to what's around you, you're now responding to what's around you because you control it. And that's just valuable in almost any situation.
Thank you for sharing that, because I know that's called box breathing. And I think that's something, if you're going into a big contract negotiation, if you're going into a big meeting, if you're going out and about to present to hundreds of people, that's a good exercise that kind of gets you calm and centered and in the right frame, right?
Absolutely. It also, one of the challenges of being the boss, right, is people will take what you say and do sometimes more than you intended. And so, one of my mentors years ago said, as a manager, you can never afford to have a bad day. So what I try to do is not have real emotion at work. If I'm really upset about something, nobody will know. At least I hope not. If I want to make a point about something, I might, use colorful language or act like I'm upset. But if I'm really upset, then I'm not in control. So I'll take that breathing and that consciousness and get under control first before I'll have that conversation. It's the same thing, like, if you have kids and you yell at your kids all the time, they start to ignore you, right? If you're a manager or a business owner or whatever, and people are afraid of what your emotional state's going to be, they can't work for you. There's a Harvard Business Review article from like the 90s that, you can handle a good boss or a bad boss. You can't handle an inconsistent boss. And so, using mindfulness allows you to be presenting the way you want to present, as opposed to the way your mood might be in the moment. And it's vastly better if it's intentioned and intentional than if it's just whipsaw.
So Ted, this is your world. You're leading people and all of that. And you're very balanced, and like I would never know some of the things that go on behind the scenes that I do know from knowing you. So talk about this. What's your perspective on that?
Yeah, I always think as the leader, right, you have to be able to manage things. I had a mentor one time say to me, I think kind of the same thing Lauren said, that you only have like 3 types of days, like good, great, or excellent, right? Like I have to always seem like I'm under control. And I think we've all been around at some point, maybe someone that was a leader of something, right? That they seemed like they were out of control, out of balance. And in those situations, it's like everybody else is just shaken up, right? It's like if the head is not kind of, doesn't seem like it's in control, the rest of the body is just going to be all over the place. So I tend to, take a breath before I say certain things, before I get, try to make sure that I'm, that I have, things, my thoughts, kind of managed and what I'm going to say. And then, one of the things even now, oftentimes, Lawrence, is when we do a lot of things virtually, right? I really tend to, request that my team has their cameras on, because I need to be able to see the faces, right, when I'm saying certain things, right, and their reactions. I think that's very important, right? Because if you don't, you don't know if that person's over there like going crazy, like from what you're saying, or if everybody's kind of calm. And so I think that, what you're saying, it's very, it's very important to be able to, kind of as a leader, right? Be able to just manage, it's like, anything, right? Like if you're a parent, right? The kids come home and you're like, it's over, kids. It's over. Like, yeah, like this is like, we're doomed. What do you mean, Dad, we're doomed? I mean, you gotta always kind of have it together.
Yeah.
Even if you're not sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's, occasionally a show of emotion to make a point is okay.
Mhm.
But it's kind of like, when I played football in high school, there was something called a helmet adjustment, right? The coach would come up, grab your helmet, pull you in, his face is right next to yours and scream at you. Well, we don't do that in business anymore, right? But you can make a helmet adjustment in a way that's still positive. So there was a guy I worked for years ago, amazing leader. And what he would do, he was one of the senior, well, eventually left as a CEO of a business unit of the world's largest aerospace and defense companies. I mean, this guy, very successful. And what he would do is he would do this little giggle thing and repeat himself. That was his version of the helmet adjustment. And you'd have to be aware, gets back to mindfulness, right? You had to be aware of what that meant. And when you realize it, like, ooh, okay, yeah, we need to change something here, because he wasn't going to scream and yell at you. But if this guy repeated himself, it's like, okay, we got a problem and we better make this right. That's and right. So, it's all it's a different style, but I thought it was a great style in terms of just being, a very approachable, easy to get along with guy who was very clear in his expectations. And you would know if once you got to know him, if he wasn't happy, but you weren't going to, I think probably knew him for about 10, 11 years. I think I heard him swear once in that amount of time.
Okay. Now this is good stuff. If you're CEO, you've got your business, even if you're just leading yourself, this is something that you really need to lean in on. So we're gonna get really into some meat here. The 5 martial arts secrets to unleash your business breakthrough. Well, let's get into this. So what's secret number 1 for that entrepreneur who's looking to get that breakthrough?
Well, number 1 was the mindfulness and using it as part of your everyday life. Mm-hmm. Secret number 2 isn't really a secret, but it's something you get a lot of practice with in martial arts, and that's goal setting. Every business, every employee, you're going to have some kind of goal setting, right? And the thing with martial arts that's really a gem is it's competency based, right? You go through various ranks, whatever they are. And there's certain things you have to do to make that rank. So you might get there in months, you might get there in years. I am not a very athletic person. It took me a very long time to earn a black belt. I know other people who do a lot faster. It's not, going to class 5 days a week for 4 years and congratulations. It's go show me you can do these things. You can do this kata. You can do these applications. You can hit this way. You can kick this way. You can do whatever the criteria happen to be for the rank that you're at, or like with a competition sport like judo. It's a certain number of tournament wins and whatnot, right? So everything in martial arts is competency based, and it's kind of it's kind of a non-secret, but really essential, which is being able to set those goals. Okay, for the next rank, I need to do these things. Here's what I'm going to practice in class. Here's what I'm going to practice out of class. Here's who I'm going to go to for help. Right. And you laying out these paths and these plans, and it's the same thing that you do. A lot of people use SMART goals, but whatever version you do, it's got to be something that's specific. It's time bound. It's measurable, so you know if you're making progress or not. And that translates directly from any competency-based martial art, which is virtually all of them, to everything else you do in life, especially in business. And that's something that, a lot of people, there's an old saying, people seldom hit what they don't aim for. A lot of people are too squishy in what they're trying to accomplish, or it's too far away and they don't think about the interim steps to get there. I want to be a black belt. Okay, great. You just walked in the door. Right. Here's the plan. Here's what you have to do. You have to go through this rank and then this one and then that one, whatever. Same thing with building a business. Same thing with running an organization. Same thing with any of those kind of things. It's that setting and achieving challenging goals that stack on top of each other, right? Little goals turn to bigger goals, turn to bigger goals. And you go from being, I just walked in the door with a no belt to a white belt to a yellow belt to a green belt to a, blue, brown, black, whatever continuity. I mean, every martial art is a little bit different colors, but even if it's, chartreuse with green polka dot belt, whatever it is in your, in your progression, that one doesn't exist, I don't think. You know the path and you know what it takes to get there, and it translates to everything in life.
Yeah, definitely. Goal setting is a huge part of both business and even the martial arts. Like, I even think of it as we were always, like, every dojo I was a part of, they would always give us a target beyond the target. It was never like you're just going to hit the surface. It was always your goal is to really hit through the target.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
In fact, if anybody's ever learned to break a board, that's the biggest trick to breaking the board is don't punch at the board, punch to the back, punch through the board. Mm-hmm. And I've taught 8-year-olds how to break a board. I've done it in teaming things where you do a team building kind of thing for your organization. And I've had 58-year-old or 58, 59, I forget. I think it's 58-year-old grandmother break a board on the first try. Right? It's not difficult to do. It's kind of a parlor trick, but it's amazing how good it makes people feel. And the number one, and there's a whole bunch of technique things to go to it, but the number one thing is you don't aim at the board, you aim through it. And that's the same thing with any of your goals. You're absolutely right, Eric.
Right. So Lawrence, I'm all into trying to learn how to break a board. I think that would be a pretty cool thing to do. If you could show me kind of after the show over how to break a board, I think that's what I want. All that other stuff, people kicking me and all that, I don't want no part of that.
I will teach you exactly how to do that. And I can, if we were in person, I could do it in 5 minutes. I'm not sure how it's going to work virtual, but I'll do my best, Ted.
It's funny. I shared with Eric one time. I had a business associate, and she and her whole family was in the martial arts. Right, I heard her mention it one time, but I didn't really think much of it until I saw her at this conference, and she had a black eye or whatever. And I was like what, Dawn, what happened? And she was like, well, they had some type of competition, and I was like, man, that is something. She said, yeah, her dad did it to her. Like, I'm like, wow, like your dad blacked your eye, like, yeah, like this is serious. This is serious. So
wow.
Yeah.
It can happen. It goes back to competency based, right? A female black belt, male black belt, they're both a black belt. And you can, I had just a quick example here. When I was in judo, I was in high school. I don't know. I think it was a green belt or something. I forget. Whatever, maybe a brown belt. And I went to a week-long martial arts tournament, and I went up against this 5 foot tall, maybe 100-pound female black belt. And I found out later she was actually the shortest active police officer in the state of Washington at the time, and had been a Marine. Man. You know where this is going to end, right? But anyway, I was working with her in we were sparring. It's called randori, and I threw her and I screwed up and fell on top of her in the throw. I just completely messed up. In the process, I dislocated her shoulder. And I'm freaking out like, oh my God, I've just heard this small girl, and I've forgotten her rank now. And she stands back up and takes her arm with the clearly dislocated shoulder and grabs a hold of her gi with the injured arm and goes, come on. And I'm like, aren't you hurt? She goes, come on, we're finishing this. Okay. And she proceeded to kick the living crap out of me. And then afterwards, she got her shoulder reset by her, and she was done for the day because she would have harmed it more. But she was like, "I'm going to finish this, and you are going to lose," and I did.
Wow.
But she was 5 foot nothing, and like I said, maybe 100 pounds, but just total badass. Wow. And going back to Eric's, you can't judge a book by its cover, but also, a black belt's a black belt. I mean, you might be small, and there is some difference in strength and whatnot and mass, but skill can overcome that. And she had the skill, and I wasn't that much below her rank wise, but yeah, I lost badly, and it was very impressive. I pretty much fell in love with her at that moment. Not that anything ever happened, but it's like, it's like one of those, we're not worthy. And yeah, it was, but it was very impressive. And it says there's a mental thing as well as a physical thing there, right? She could have just bowed out because of the injury, and instead she's like, no, I'm finishing this. And then, she just went and taught the rest of the time instead of competing because, she didn't want to make the injury any worse.
Yeah. So we're talking about the 5 secrets. So first we talked about mindfulness. We talked about goal setting being number 2. What's secret number 3?
Well, I was going to do this in a different order, but since that story came up, I'll switch the order and make this number 3, which is overcoming setbacks. So, you were talking about black eyes. I've mentioned the, dislocated shoulder. Stuff happens, right? You're going to get hurt if you're doing martial arts. And you find ways to continue to learn even when you can't. So, in the example with this lady whose name I can't remember anymore. It's been too long. But, what she did is she stayed on the mat. She watched and learned from seeing and observing. And she also taught people, right? So she wasn't out. She was, restricted, but she wasn't out, right? And the same thing happens. You go, you do a belt test and you fail. You try to break a board, or you fail. You go to a tournament, you lose, right? All kinds of things are going to happen that set you back in your training. And there's an old joke that a black belt is just a white belt who never gave up. And so, there will be setbacks. There's setbacks in business. Something happens with the economy. Something happens with the competition. An employee up and quits or moves or, whatever it is, right? Something always happens. And one of the things you take from martial arts is, okay, well, that didn't work. I'm going to try something else, right? You see that when you're sparring, for example, you might go in and you think, hey, I'm going to do this technique and it's going to be great. And then you run into sort of the Mike Tyson quote of, everybody has a plan until I punch him in the face. Stuff doesn't work, right? But you find another way. So there's going to be a setback. There's going to be a workaround. And you start getting, I've got much more creative through martial arts in terms of problem solving than I was, before I did. Well, I mean, let's face it, I started when I was 6, but the farther I got into martial arts is really maybe a better way of saying that. Whereas the more skilled I got, the better I got at adapting and overcoming challenges. And so that adapting and overcoming is a really big thing that you learn through martial arts. That again, it really applies directly to business, which is, hey, this thing's not working. I'm not going to, take the definition of insanity and try again exactly the same way and expect different results. No, I'm going to go pivot. I'm going to go to plan B or C or D or, J or whatever it is that it takes. I'm going to find a way to make it work. And I'm not going to accept that setback is the end.
That's interesting that you say that. I have a saying, Eric's heard me say it on numerous occasions. You got to, treat things in business as if you're locked in a room and you have to get out. Like, if not, just going to just sit in that room like forever, and that's not an option. Like you got to get out. And I think in business, I think there's that situation. I can see in martial arts, I think that the lady that you were competing against, she was thinking if that was a fight on the street, you don't get to just stop because your shoulder's out of socket. You're gonna have to continue the battle. And so I can definitely see how that could be applicable to just so many things in life.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. I mean, in real life, right, there's no referee, there's no time limit. It's not like you get to the end of the round and you get a little break and, you get your team working on you and no, it goes till it's done. Right. And, and that's, part of the reason that we teach that the best fight is the one you never get in. but it's also, get creativity and overcoming challenges, right? From a self-defense perspective, it's, awareness, avoidance, de-escalation, presence, all kinds of things you can do before you actually get physical. In business, there's a similar protocol depending on what your business is, right? Where you're going to go find the alternatives that's going to get you to what you need to do without having, for example, in my business where I do strategic sourcing and procurement, without having to go to court, right? There's a lot of things I can do if a contract's going sideways to remediate that, short of, lawyers at 10 paces, so to speak, right?
Absolutely. Okay. So what's the next secret?
Well, next one, I'm going to call perseverance. So it's kind of related to the first three, right? We've got, mindfulness, we've got goal setting, we've got overcoming setbacks. Perseverance is more of a mindset than a thing, right? And that is, I'm not going to let this stop me. I'm not going to give up. I've been knocked down and I get up. I've been knocked down again, I get up. I mean, anybody who's ever sparred or competed in any kind of martial art, you get knocked down a lot. It tends to hurt. Sometimes it hurts a lot, right? But you're going to get back up and you're going to do it again. And the nice thing about martial arts in terms of in a dojo or a gym or whatever, right? One of the things is there's an intentional flaw in the technique that's designed to make sure that you can do that rinse and repeat, right? So for example, if you're doing MMA fighting, you're not allowed to do a throat punch. You're not allowed to gouge somebody's eye out. You're not allowed to, strike with downward force to the back of their neck if they're on their knees, right? They do these things so that people are going to be hurt but not injured, and there's a big difference, right? And so in a self-defense situation, you take away that intentional flaw. Okay, now I am going to gouge your eye out, right? Or whatever it happens to be. But what we don't want to do is be in a situation where I'm just going to lay down and take it, right? You're always going to get back up. You're always going to, compete and continue. And that's one of the things in martial arts drills. There's a philosophical thing. Some people believe that the student should never lose. I don't personally agree. I think it's good to lose and to learn from that. But part of it gets to the student should never quit. Right. So, you can tap out, fine. Right. But you're going to go back and try again, and you're going to try again, and you're going to try again. And eventually you don't got to tap out no more because you've learned something and you're going to be able to apply that. And now we go to the next thing.
Yeah. I mean, that perseverance is key. I mean, there are a lot of successful entrepreneurs you see them at the top, but they just failed, and just didn't stop.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it's I think it's 50% of all new businesses go out of business within the first 5 years. And it's like 80% of them in the first year or whatever. I don't remember the numbers exactly, but the point is that if you're really a successful entrepreneur, you're going to have a failed business in there somewhere, or you're going to have a bad year in there somewhere. It doesn't always work right the first time, but you'll learn from it. And anything that you learn from is a good experience. If you live through it and you learn from it, it's a good experience, even if you didn't like it. And that's what that perseverance mindset gets you to is I'm going to take the lumps and I'm going to come back better, whatever it was.
Great point. Okay. So we're now down to the final secret.
Yeah. So we've talked about mindfulness, goal setting, overcoming, setbacks and perseverance, right?
Yes.
And when you combine those things together, I think that creates the fifth one. And the fifth one's confidence. It's having been there and done that. Give you an example that's just a martial arts thing. Buddy of mine, Mark McYoung, taught me how to catch a punch. And there's a fascinating psychological thing. I did stadium security part-time for 26 years at a football stadium. So I had gotten, a lot of violent altercations. And when someone throws a punch at you and you catch it, if it's a guy, it makes him go erp. And it almost always ends the fight right there. This is assuming social type violence, not predatory violence, but it's one of those things that, like, when you do that, you don't have to continue, because now we can go back to talking again, because they go, oh, that was a really bad idea. And yet this guy hasn't hurt me yet. So this is good, because he's going to hurt me if I don't change. Right. And you can see it you can see their brain shifting gears. Interesting dynamic, by the way. Most female people that throw a punch, if you catch their punch, the next one comes anyway. I learned that the hard way. But I don't know why. There's maybe it's because guys grew up, kind of sparring with each other to some degree, whether they're martial artists or not, and most women didn't, or something. I don't know, but I did discover it's not true for everybody, but for most people, if you catch their punch, it's done, right? Well, that's a confidence thing. It's just a little trick, right? I just sucked all the confidence out of that person. Nobody's going to attack you if they don't think they can win. They think they're bigger, they're stronger, they're faster, they're madder, whatever it is, right? Maybe they're so drunk they don't notice. But when somebody throws a punch and you catch it, their confidence goes to like nothing, and yours is real high, right? And that puts you in a really different dynamic from sort of a power perspective or control perspective than you have otherwise. Well, it's the same thing in business, right? If you've got, maybe you had 5 businesses that failed, and you're on the 6th one, and you've learned from all that, you've got your set of lessons that have built you to more. That confidence means you know what to do. It's not just know how to do to succeed. It's also, you know what, this one's not going to work. I need to sell it off. I need to kill it off, whatever, and go to something else because it's not working. Think about things like social media marketing, right? That whole field has changed so fast in the last decade that what worked stopped working, right? And then the new thing stopped working. And then the new thing stopped working. If you got the confidence to go, I'm going to figure it out, and I understand the dynamics, and I know the difference between X versus Twitter, or well, the same thing, X versus Facebook versus Snapchat versus whatever it is versus YouTube versus whatever, right? And I know how to approach my audience in each one of those. I can go with that confidence of what I've been successful in and figure out, okay, the algorithm changed, but I still understand the space. So now I'm going to change my approach to meet the new algorithm or whatever it is, right?
For sure. I mean, kind of confidence is key. I mean, I just can't think of anything I've accomplished that was great or successful without having a level of confidence. Like, I can't think of a time if my confidence was at a low point that I did something great. And I don't think that's
right.
So
but
I
it's
think
earned, right?
is key. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And that's the whole thing, is that when confidence is based on accomplishment, it's real, and it can last, those bruises, so to speak. Right. I mean, I've gone, well, I didn't compete a whole lot in tournaments except in judo, but occasionally I would. And so I had a instructor who also was a Golden Gloves champion. And he's like, let's put on the gloves and let's go for it. I'm like, okay. I lost bad. I mean, I lost really bad. And I got back up and I went, wait a minute. Why am I boxing? I'm not a boxer. Like, this is stupid. And then I changed, tactics and I held my own. Right. And that was what he's actually looking for. Yeah, that was the lesson from it. But I had the comments like, I'm not no good at this. I'm a freaking black belt. I'm good at this, but I'm playing his game. I'm not playing my game. This is dumb. I'm going to play my game, right? Because I don't know his game. Mm-hmm. And it was a really good learning experience, of which I got a broken nose and a black eye. But hey, it was still a great learning experience.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, it wasn't that, and this is a lesson for a business owner that's listening to us. The lesson wasn't that you needed to quit. The lesson was you needed to change your tactics.
Right. yeah, I needed to play my game, right?
Mhm.
And by the way, you're probably looking, going, your nose is straight. What are you talking about? So I've had 2 sinus surgeries. With one of the sinus surgeries, the surgeon felt bad for me and straightened my nose out just as an extra benefit because
While he was in there, he said, "Let me just go and straighten
yeah, which
this
is like,
crooked
wow,
nose
my nose
up
used to have
for you."
this weird little bend thing to it because it was broken so many times. So thank you, Dr. McLean. I really appreciate that. But I
Shout
mean,
out, Dr.
you know,
McLean.
yeah.
Sounds like a great doctor. He had a chance to go in there and straighten your nose. That was great.
Great dude. Unfortunately, he's retired, but he is a really awesome guy.
Cool.
The point about the confidence is, right. Okay, I got a very high pain tolerance. I've been hit a lot. I've been in a lot of pain before and just worked through it. It wasn't that, right. It was that, this guy was using boxing technique when I knew karate and I was trying to imitate it. It's like, I'm not a boxer. I've never been a boxer. I'll never be a boxer. And so, I went back to karate and all of a sudden now it was a fight instead of, me being a punching bag.
That's great. All right. Now, those are 5 powerful lessons, 5 martial arts secrets to unleash your business breakthrough. So we mentioned at the beginning that you've written 29 books. So
Actually, it's 30 now.
Oh, it's 30 now. Oh man.
Yeah. I've published a lot of books.
Okay. All right. So 30 books. So which of your books would you recommend for that entrepreneur who's looking to level up, get to that next level?
So most of what I do is really martial arts and violence society kind of related. So it's not exactly applicable. Although the lessons from martial arts, as we've been talking about, directly translate to business. If you're not a martial artist, most of them are probably not directly applicable, but there are a few that are. So if you're in strategic sourcing and procurement, or you're an attorney, I co-wrote the Contract Professionals Playbook. It is basically like a legal textbook around performance and outcome-based contracting. So high-end stuff. If you don't do that for a living and you really are having trouble going to sleep at night, that will solve your problem. But if you are in the business, it's a good one. There's just kind of generically for both business folks and not, there's a book called Martial Arts in Your Life. It's about why people go into martial arts, what they learn from it, and how they're able to use it in kind of their everyday life as well. It's a multi-award winning book, and it's something that, if you want to understand us people who like getting punched in the face for some weird reason, that's the way to find out. But you can also see a lot of lessons that apply to the rest of your life and to business. One that's directly related to business is called Sensei, Mentor, Teacher, Coach. Most business books I've found are really designed for people who are already in charge. And there wasn't like a practical kind of leading from the middle, how to get good at it sort of thing. And when we wrote that, the foreword was written by one of the, so do you remember back in the Vietnam War, there was an iconic picture of the last helicopter leaving the embassy in Saigon as the city is falling? So you never heard of this guy, but the guy who arranged the evacuation of Saigon, his name was is Colonel Anthony Wood. He's the guy who wrote the foreword to that. So he's a Marine. He's an amazing dude. Meeting him was like he was like a hero of mine in high school when I read a story, and then the guy wrote the foreword to one of my books. So that one's called Sensei, Mentor, Teacher, Coach. The subtitle is Powerful Leadership for Leaderless Times. And Colonel Wood's the guy who wrote the foreword. So if you want a good book on leadership and mentoring and coaching, that's one I not only recommend, but I loved writing it because it made me better at it in terms of writing it. And I got to meet one of my heroes who actually lived up to what I hoped about him. If you want something that's kind of broader and a lot of strategy and tactics, a lot of people have read Sun Tzu, which is very famous text. It's translated to war. It's translated to, to business. It's translated all kinds of things. Well, we did a version of that called Clarity versus Chaos, Sun Tzu's Rules for Life and War. And the foreword to that one is written by Mark Raffin, who's known as the Negotiations Ninja. There are some self-defense things in there, some business things in there. It's not just one topic. We just took the most interesting interpretation of each piece of Sun Tzu's work, but it's a massive and definitive guide on art of war and how you can apply it, among other things, to business. So there's those are kind of the ones that are most relevant, I think, to business people. And if you just want a good fun read and you like, kind of martial arts stuff like Cobra Kai or a Karate Kid or whatever, I have a multi-award winning fiction book called Uma, the Champion of the Seven Dojo. Uma means horse in Japanese, by the way. That one's just a fun read.
Awesome. Well, congratulations on your success as an author.
Thanks.
Quite a few of our followers, they're looking to write one book, and you've written 30. What advice do you have?
I also wrote a book on how to write a book.
That's a good book. I'll take that one.
Sure. That one, it's called Punching Up. And it's published a book that martial artists will want to own and actually read. But it really applies, a lot of my target audience, as you can tell, is martial artists. So it was aimed sort of at martial artists, but you're smart guys. You could read that and easily learn how to publish a book on any topic. And it covers both fiction and nonfiction. But it's called Punching Up. So if you want a book on how to write a book, there you go.
Okay, fantastic. All right, so we're now at Ted's favorite part of the show. It's called Write This Down.
We're really not.
This is where we each go around and we share at least one idea from today's episode that was shared that people need to write down so they can level up. So Lawrence, you're our guest of honor. What do the people need to write down from today's show?
I think that really the tie between excellence in martial arts and excellence in business is underappreciated. And, you might have taken martial arts as a kid. You might have never done it. It's something to really look into because it makes you a better person. It makes you a stronger person. It makes you a more successful person. And it directly translates to almost anything that you do in business to make you better at it.
I totally agree. Thank you. Hopefully the people wrote that down. All right, Ted.
Yeah, just in listening to everything that you've been discussing, because when we first started this topic, I was just like, okay, let me hear what this guy Lawrence is saying. How's he tying martial arts to this? And then the more that you started talking about this, and especially in the 5 areas, and you talk about the overcoming setbacks and the perseverance. I mean, I just don't think you can be an entrepreneur that didn't deal with some setbacks, right? And then had to persevere. But even if you just seem to have gotten it right that very first time, the first deal that you went after, you got it and you were successful. Okay, but that second one, right, was hard, right? So you had to deal with some setbacks in that and had to persevere, or certain things that you've had to deal with as a business owner. And we think about the different things that you have to kind of just deal with. We think about things like the whole COVID situation and business owners having to figure out ways to pivot, right? You're like, hey, I'm all in. I don't have a plan B, right? So I got to figure out a way to deal with that situation. And there's some people out here that had some of their most successful years in business. I mean, we've interviewed some of them that during the pandemic, when they were forced to persevere and think outside of the box, right? And kind of going back to the example that you said about the lady that, she was like, okay, my shoulder is out of whack, but yeah, I'm still going to continue fighting. And I think that's, I really can see how that's really relevant, applicable to being an entrepreneur. That, throughout the time I've been in business, there's been so many things that have been setbacks or different challenges, and like giving up is not an option, right? It's just not an option. So yeah, those are the things that really resonated well with me, the whole kind of overcoming setbacks and perseverance.
Great. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it's not Peloton, but I have a exercise machine behind me, and kind of reminds me of the Peloton thing, right? During COVID, those guys were riding high and doing amazing, and the world changed. And so, you got before, during, after, and how that whole business model changed. It's an interesting case study. Probably be taught in business schools in the future. But just a easy point to, hey, the world is not static, and as a business person, you've got to accommodate.
That's right.
Absolutely. So my contribution to this segment, I still have to go back to when you were talking about you box the guy who was a Golden Gloves, but you box with him, right? And so you could take away a couple of lessons from that, right? You could just say, I'm no good at this, right? That could have been just the lesson. Like same with business. You encounter a failure, I'm just not good at this. Or you could say, you know what? It's not that I'm not good at this. I just need to switch up my tactics.
Yeah.
Right. And then once you change your tactics, you have more success.
Boy, you could have just said no. No, I'm not trying to put them gloves on with you, man.
Well, I could have, except he was one of my instructors, so I wanted to I wanted to keep learning. So but yeah, it's not for everybody, Ted. It's not for everybody. But I will say I thought that was a great lesson. I mean, that was, God, I don't know, 18, 19 years ago or something like that. And I still remember it, and I still remember what I learned from it. So,
yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah, I mean, this has been a great episode.
It really has.
This is one I'm going to have to go back and listen to when I'm not in host mode. Because sometimes, Ted, I forget I'm actually the host and I'm listening, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm supposed to be asking them questions. Let me get back.
That's right.
But this is what I'm going to have to go back when I'm in the gym and listen to, because you just shared a lot of great information.
Or when you're watching me chop through that wood, because Lawrence is going to show me how to. It's going to show me how to do it.
That's the other piece of that. Watching you break the board. I didn't think about that.
That's it.
Yeah. There you go. So how can people best connect with you, get you books, and that type of thing?
So I'm on LinkedIn. It's Lawrence A. Kane. So just as a easy term, where I'm the Lawrence Kane who's the author, not the one who's the Zodiac killer suspect. That's a different guy. So you can go on Amazon and search for my author page. It's Lawrence Kane, or I'm on LinkedIn. Those are the easiest ways to get a hold of me.
Fantastic. All right. So again, thank you for everything that you shared, and for those of you listening and watching, don't forget to share the show.
Share the show.
That's right. Don't keep great information to yourself. So don't forget also that you can listen to the audio version of the 30-Minute Hour podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all those places. All you have to do is go and hit the subscribe button, and that way you'll never miss a future episode. So this concludes this week's episode of the 30-Minute Hour podcast. And until next time, have a great one.
Thank you.